talk us through the details here, because a lot of the losses here tie back to the IPO and expenses related to that.
Yeah, Julia, absolutely. 3.9 billion of the loss. That was more than 5 billion. 5 billion in 3 months. That was mostly due to costs related to the IPO. That's true, but there's no hiding behind that, because even if you strip that out, they lost 1.3 billion in the last quarter. That's a more than 50% increase on the same period last year. And, you know, I think Wall Street might be more willing to overlook that if we were seeing the kind of growth rates when it comes to revenue that we've become used to seeing. But revenue was only up 14%, and compare that to Uber's biggest competitor in the US, Lyft, that reported yesterday 72% increase in revenue. So this is a pretty, you know, kind of ugly report on the surface, but some perspective here. If you look at gross bookings, they were up 31%. That shows that there's still demand for this. Uber Eats was up 72% in terms of revenue. That's starting to contribute a little more to the top line revenue growth in terms of Uber. And in terms of what analysts are saying this morning, Julia, it's not a complete disaster. We can show you some of the price targets today. Most of them either unchanged or even slightly raised. People are starting to look at the sense that the competition with in terms of price wars with Lyft is easing in the US. And in Goldman Sachs, I thought it was interesting. They said today, we continue to believe the risk reward in owning the leader in this space is favorable despite the regulatory concerns, despite the competition. This is still the biggest player out there, and they're a very diverse business, Julia. So I think that's why we see some kind of long-term positivity despite this disappointing number today.
No question, this country is on edge right now. So just consider this. Just days after those 2 mass shootings, a young man armed with a rifle and wearing body armor surrendered to police after he walked into a Missouri Walmart and just started pushing a cart. Customers obviously panicked. The store manager pulled the fire alarm. A witness described what happened next.
A real loud siren goes off for like a second, and then they say, suspected fire, possible fire, exit immediately. And there's an employee standing there, and I was like, looked at him like that, and he's like, I don't know. And this lady was screaming at us, she said, get out now, get out, get out.
There were a lot of people hiding outside behind these barriers and businesses, and it was pretty chaotic for a couple minutes.
Omar Jimenez is following this one for us, and Omar, no shots fired. So who is this guy, and what was he doing?
Yeah, at this point, police have identified him as Dmitry Andreychenko, as a 20-year-old. His background still unclear at this point, but you touched on the main piece of good news: no shots fired and no one injured in this. Now, what they are trying to piece together at this point in the investigation is what motivated him to do this. We know when he walked into this Walmart, according to police, he was filming himself on his cell phone. For what purpose, we still do not know. And then pushing a shopping cart through the store. And again, as you mentioned earlier, that was what prompted the manager to pull the fire alarm and for people to evacuate as quickly as possible. And in the process of all that, this man tried to casually stroll out of the store, where he was confronted by an off-duty firefighter who was also wielding a weapon, and detained this man, Andreychenko, until police arrived just a few minutes later. But here's how police described their arrival to the scene, again, just about 3 minutes later.
He walked in here heavily armed with body armor on, in military fatigues, and caused a great amount of panic inside the store. So he certainly had the capability and the potential to harm people. He was compliant with us, but his intent was not to cause peace or comfort to anybody that was in the business here. In fact, he's lucky he's alive still, to be honest.
And let's remember what he looked like when he came in. He was wearing that almost military-like style clothing. He was armed with that assault rifle as well. And it is important to note that Missouri is an open carry state, but it is illegal to carry a weapon with lethal capacity when it is being done in a threatening manner. And I think at least it is safe to say a lot of people here felt at least a little bit threatened as they evacuated this store on that front. And while we know the man's identity at this point, police say they hope to be able to release more information about him once charges are officially filed. But they told us they arrested him for making terrorist threats in the first degree, Brooke.
If you could say something to your dad right now, what would it be?
I hope you come back and that God protects you.
She didn't do nothing wrong. She isn't a criminal.
Hispanic people, they don't come here to hurt or injure anybody. They come here to make a better future for the kids. They took him away to Louisiana, I believe.
Have you been able to talk to your dad on the phone at all?
No, they didn't want to give me no information. They kept telling me, oh, we don't know where he's at, or like, we don't know if he's detained yet. And like, they were telling me information that I already know, and I was like in my head, I was just like, I know more stuff than y'all do. The last time he said something, he said to my mom, take care of the kids because the immigration has now captured me, and I might be going back home.
North Korea carrying out its third missile test just in 8 days. And the president put out a series of tweets, and they read in part, these missile tests are not a violation of our signed Singapore agreement, nor was there discussion of short-range missiles when we shook hands. He goes on to say North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will do the right thing because he is far too smart not to, and he does not want to disappoint his friend, President Trump. So the president clearly downplaying this. Do you think the president is strengthening Kim's position? And also, what kind of a message does this send to our allies, U.S. allies in the area?
It sends a terrible message to our allies in the area because these missiles are solid fueled, which means they can be sort of set up for launch in minutes. They're mobile, so they can't be easily detected. They can reach our bases in South Korea within minutes, and they can reach Japan and other places equally quickly, or at least as quickly. So this is sending a message to our allies in the region is that we're not as interested in their security as we once were. That's one interpretation, which I think they'll draw. And this represents continued technical improvements by the North Koreans in their whole rocket fleet, their missile fleet, and their technology. And again, going
back to
you're
making the point, look, even though it may not be able to make it to the U.S., this is not something to be ignored because they're clearly making
progress, and that progress can also translate into technical aspects of intercontinental missiles, which would affect us. But I think the other factor is this Singapore agreement was this nebulous notion of we're going to work for denuclearization. We have not yet reached a suitable understanding with the North Koreans of what is denuclearization.
What is that? How do you define that? That is still an open question even to this day.
They claim it means they keep nuclear weapons. They just don't have as many as they had before. We say they have to give up absolutely all their weapons. We haven't even reached that conclusion.